1918, Austria-Hungary. The Entente forces are pressing on all fronts. The demoralized imperial army is no longer capable of doing anything. Chaos and famine reign within the state itself. This incites the subjugated peoples to seek independence.
Well, if I close my eyes, all the problems will disappear. Sir, this is serious. If nothing is done, civil war will break out in the empire. Alright, let's make a federation, but it's so wonderful here. Who would want to leave the Habsburgs?
We have been starving for 2 years now.
Nonsense, look here. Hey, peoples of the empire, I promise you freedom.
In a federation with Austria.
I don't think they heard that.
The empire began to fall apart. The Czechs, Serbs, Croats, and even Hungarians declared independence from the Austrian monarchy, and the authorities accepted this, saying that there was nothing they could do about it. The only state that the empire did not let go so easily was Ukraine. Its western lands, inspired by the struggle of their eastern brothers, decided to take fate into their own hands. They held negotiations to resolve the issue peacefully. However, they received nothing but empty promises in response. This was not surprising, since the imperial authorities had already promised Galicia to the Poles. Because they were Catholics, had good relations with the Habsburgs, and generally had greater sympathy from the West than Ukraine.
Guys, they're treating us like fools. Nah, why would the cruel empire authorities, who do not respect the Ukrainian people and constantly obstructing our path to freedom, appoint Polish to leadership positions in our region as... Oh, yes, it's looking right.
However, the Ukrainian people were prepared for such a turn of events. The National Council, led by Yevgen Petrushevich, prepared a military coup. On October 31, Poland announced the annexation of the lands of Galicia, and on November 1, the Zund was formed on the map. Ukrainian military units were able to occupy almost the entire region, suppressing local Polish and Austrian uprisings. The only cities where the Poles still resisted were Lviv and Przemysl. In Lviv, there were a bunch of secret Polish organizations that joined forces against the Ukrainian threat and started an uprising. But without the support of Greater Poland, their resistance was doomed to fail. Therefore, it was strategically important for the Polish army to occupy Przemysl, which had a railway line to the capital of the Zund. In Przemysl itself, the Austrian command refused to hand over power to the Ukrainians, instead giving it to the Poles. However, the Polish army was unable to completely take control of the city due to significant resistance from the Ukrainian army.
However, thanks to artillery shelling and armored trains, the Poles were able to gain the upper hand, forcing Ukrainian troops to retreat from the city. After capturing Przemysl, Poland began to transfer troops to Lviv, gradually increasing its army there. The Zund hoped to hold the city with the support of the Ukrainian state, which was supposed to provide soldiers and weapons. But help came slowly and in small quantities due to the internal crisis in the state. The fighting in Lviv lasted for about a month, with varying degrees of success, until the Polish troops were able to achieve a numerical advantage. The Zund tried to rectify the situation by capturing Przemysl, but was unable to hold it for long. Having taken control of Lviv, Polish soldiers began terrorizing the city, looting and killing civilians. According to various estimates, 270 Ukrainian Christians and 150 Jews were killed during these pogroms, and about 7,000 families suffered.
Galicia, exhausted by World War I, was not ready for another bloody war. Therefore, it initially took a cold stance toward this conflict. However, witnessing the terror inflicted by the Poles, more and more volunteers joined the Ukrainian army, so it had to organize an army during the hostilities. Siege groups were formed: Schid, Stare Selo, and Shirets, which laid siege to Lviv.
Alright everyone, we need to liberate the capital because it's our capital, right? And our command believe that this will discourage the Poles from continuing this war, so Why on earth did they name my group Old Village? Yes, we're located in Old Village, but so what? What if we were, I don't know, in the village of Zalupivka? What would we be called then? Listen, now is not the time for this. Not the time? How are we going to scare our enemies with their name like that? What will the Poles say? The Old Village is coming for us, hide if you can. The Poles won't be afraid of your name, but of a terrible power with which you will beat them. Really? And what will I tell my grandchildren? They will ask me, Grandpa, Grandpa, where did you fight? And I will say to them, as part of the Old Village. Why are you laughing? Let's talk about it later. Come to think of it, East sounds a bit dull too. Oh god. And I thought the Poles were my main headache.
At the end of December, combat groups launched an offensive on the capital. Ukrainian troops pressed Polish units from all sides, forcing them to retreat deeper into the country. During the fighting, the Ukrainians approached the outskirts of the city. Explosions and gunfire could be heard from the streets themselves. Even snowstorms were unable to stop the formidable march. Finding themselves in such difficult conditions, the Polish garrison requested reinforcements, which arrived from Sambir, during which it pushed the Ukrainian troops further away. This was the first attack by the Zun on Lviv, which was not particularly successful. At that time, a peace conference was being held in Paris, where the fate of all of Europe, including Galicia itself, was being decided. The Ukrainian delegation, relying on the then-current policy of the right of nations to self-determination, argued for their right to exist. However, Poland had its own response to this.
You see, gentlemen, there is no Poland, there is the great Commonwealth, a home for Polish, Ukrainians, Jews who live under the Polish crown. Sounds like an empire. An empire? No, more like a free home for many, where only one nation and language dominates. Definitely an empire. No, it's not a damn empire. Listen, everything will be fine. Everyone will have equal right, autonomy, and what else do I need to say to make you believe me? Okay, we need to consult. Well, what do you think? As soon as the Poles captured Lviv, they immediately began pogroms. Therefore, I have doubts about their story about free nation in one state. So, should we side with Ukraine? Are you out of your mind? You have seen what's going on there. In the east, beside them, there are anarchists, communists, and even the whites fighting. Such a struggle sucks you in more than Bill's mothers. Hey, what the hell? We'd better avoid all this nonsense. What does my mother have to do with it? What about our credo of free nations? This will disgrace our honor. Man, honor. Well, you really said it. Okay, we believe you, but the oil fields in Galicia are ours. Deal. Oh, and give the Ukrainians autonomy. Of course we won't do that. What? Never mind. Damn it.
Things did not go very well for the Ukrainian delegation at the conference. Therefore, Yevhen Petrushevich gave the order to immediately launch a second offensive on Lviv in order to strengthen Ukraine's negotiating position. Bloody battles began, for which the Poles were now prepared. They put up serious resistance, which stifled the offensive. They didn't get much success, so the top brass started looking for other ways to take the city. The UGA's top brass, led by Mikhailo Omelyanovich Pavlenko, worked out a plan. The goal was to take control of the Lviv-Przemysl railway line, and then later take both cities. The operation began on February 16. Ukrainian artillery began to heavily bombard Polish positions, after which the infantry itself went on the offensive. Ukrainian troops advanced relentlessly, even though the Poles defended themselves fiercely. After some time, the Zun managed to capture the village of Vukchuki and cut off the railway line. Polish regiments tried to recapture the village, but Ukrainian troops were ultimately able to consolidate their positions. Panic spread throughout Lviv. The Polish command found itself in a critical situation that threatened the complete defeat of their troops on the front.
Oh dear, things aren't going very well. If only there was someone who could fix that. I said, if only there was someone who could fix that. Franz here. Excuse me, there was some bad eggs in my omelette. So, guys, what's going on here? Why did you come here, frog lover?
Negotiations.
Yes, exactly, negotiations. Listen, let's settle this peacefully. I came here on a mission to settle everything. There is no reason to spill even More blood. I'm done. Whew, it was nice to talk to you. Too bad we couldn't come to agreement. Well, have fun. Au revoir.
The Poles were able to regroup and gather the remnants of their troops at the front. In particular, Poland's strength at that time came from the Entente, which regarded the Communists as a major threat and Poland as a stronghold against them. Therefore, it armed the Warsaw Army with modern weapons. It even formed a new army in France from prisoners and emigrants, which numbered about 80,000 soldiers.
Alright, my friend, here we have a large, well-armed army with plenty of artillery and armored vehicles. Thank you. Now nothing can stop the returning of the Red Pospolita to the world map. But you must use it only against the communists. Is that clear? No fighting with the Ukrainians. I promise, we'll never, ever.
At the first opportunity, Poland sent Haller's army to the front, which began offensive operations. Cannons roared. The Polish army attacked from all sides and had a numerical advantage in everything from ammunition to human resources. In addition, many of the Galician troops, influenced by communist propaganda, defected to the Bolsheviks in order to fight the Poles together. Therefore, the situation on the front deteriorated rapidly. In the end, Ukrainian troops on both sides found themselves in the so-called Triangle of Death. They were surrounded by communists, Poles, and the hostile Romanian kingdom. International politics failed completely. The UNR had no allies or even a single state that sympathized with the situation of the Ukrainian army.
Well, we finally met. Fight side by side. Yes. Will you help us in the war against the Muscovites? Well, that was awkward. Yes. So you fight your enemies and we fight ours. It seems so.
There was nowhere to go. Therefore, the UGA began to prepare all its forces for a final breakthrough. The Galician army created a powerful artillery group consisting of 4 regiments. It also prepared its infantry for the offensive. On June 7th, the Ukrainians began their offensive with a massive artillery attack. Smoke enveloped the summer fields, and blood was shed on the Polish positions. The UGA advanced in battle, winning victories. In this way, the Ukrainian troops managed to recapture Chortkiv and Buchach. Fighting also continued in the north, where fierce battles for Ternopil unfolded. Motivated Galician soldiers advanced, relentlessly defeating Polish troops and recapturing street after street. Ternopil was liberated, and the offensive continued westward. Due to their successes on the battlefield, 90,000 volunteers signed up for the army. However, due to a lack of weapons, only 15 were accepted into the army. And the longer the offensive lasted, the fewer weapons there were. Already on the outskirts of Lviv, the shortage of bullets was particularly acute. The soldiers had only a few dozen rounds left. The artillery had slightly more reserves, but not much.
Okay guys, I will bet 10,000 grivnas. Not bad, not bad. That's small change. My bet is 10 kilograms of sugar. Well, I will bet 1 bullet. Wow, he bet 1 bullet, more beautiful in my life. Take off your heads, quick, take off your heads. Oh my god.
Meanwhile, the Polish army was able to bring in fresh reserves, making a counteroffensive inevitable. There was no real choice. The initial command decided on an organized retreat across the Zbruch River. The UGA joined the rest of the Ukrainian soldiers to fight the communists, while Galicia remained under Polish rule. Despite the defeat, Ukrainians remembered this struggle. The Polish authorities repeatedly tried to desecrate the graves of UGA heroes and distort events in their favor, but they failed to suppress Ukrainian resistance. This legacy of the Western liberation struggle was passed on to newer generations who continued the fight against Polish oppression. And although the war for Western Ukraine was lost, the battle for the state itself was not yet over.
Окопи, важко вас кидати, а ще було важче вас побудувати. Окопи, важко вас кидати, а ще було важче вас побудувати. Ліс наш батько, темна нічка мати,